Do you ever notice how your body reacts before your mind even has a chance to catch up? Like you're suddenly tense, or your stomach drops, or you shut down without meaning to. So for a long time, I thought that meant something was wrong with me, but it was really just my nervous system doing its best to protect me. So I've spent years working on all my healing in all different ways, and really delving into my nervous system regulation, especially through and after burnout, overwhelm, and some really big life changes. And what I've learned is that you can't feel calm, confident, or clear when your body still believes you're unsafe. So, in this video, I want to walk you through why your brain keeps slipping into old protective patterns, how inner safety actually works, where you might be holding those patterns in your body, and a few simple somatic tools you can use to feel safer from the inside out. And my hope is that you leave feeling lighter and more supported in your own body. So, well, why does this actually even matter to you? Why do you care about feeling safe in your own body? Well, our inner safety is basically the foundation of everything that we want to draw to us. So abundance, confidence, relationship, health, it all comes from that feeling of inner safety. And when we don't have that, it's really hard to draw stuff in. So think about it like this. When you're trying to manifest money and you go through all these manifestation tools and techniques, and you're doing a lot of mental work, if your body, as you're doing it, feels dysregulated, feels uncomfortable, doesn't feel safe, you're not going to draw that money to you. You need to get that safe feeling in your body. And the same with doing affirmations. If you're doing, say, affirmations around your health or about changing something about yourself, if your body doesn't believe what you're saying, then it's not going to work, basically. And so it's about how we can actually tune into that. And most people try to fix these problems by going into their thoughts, fixing their thoughts, doing this and doing that and going through it and changing this. It doesn't work because the body's not safe. And the mind actually can't think clearly because the body is not safe. But once you get to the stage where your body feels supported and everything gets easier then, so decisions get easier, setting boundaries is better, and even taking rest becomes a lot easier. So I've obviously experienced I'm a human being, basically. So I experience ups and downs in my nervous system, right? We all do. We don't sit there with a perfectly balanced nervous system all of the time. And this can often show itself when we don't expect it, and I did a video recently about being triggered, but it can also be when we start thinking about certain things that we need to do and our body starts to feel that fear. And for me, I have found very much when it comes to, say, doing affirmations and trying to change something, when I don't really believe it and I feel in my body, I can actually feel anxiety hitting in my body. I can feel my solar plexus like contracting essentially when I try and say affirmations that I don't really believe. And so what I need to be doing more is getting myself much safer in my body so those affirmations can take more easily. But if my body is contracting with anxiety every time I say those words, I can say them a million times and my body's still going to contract with anxiety, so I'm not going to believe it. And it's just realizing that we can change this so we can get our baseline safety higher. Now, part of the reason why I've spent a lot of my life with my baseline of safety being quite low, so basically being triggered into fight or flight for a long time. And that's because of growing up through childhood trauma and abuse and all kinds of things happening to me, and then my dad committing suicide, and basically living with trauma on trauma on trauma on trauma. And although I've done healing, it built up and built up and built up until basically my tolerance level to stress was really, really low. And I got to the point in the past where I was blaming myself that why can't I cope with this stress? Why can't I deal with this? And then learning that actually what I needed to do was just get my baseline higher so I could cope with more stress. And that's taken work and development and nervous system safety, just building that up bit by bit by bit. So I got like a better baseline so I can have more things happen. And I've got this space for stress to build up before it goes over the top. And that's the more we tune into our bodies as well, we can see when our baseline is raising. So we can feel like, okay, hang on a minute, I'm sitting about here. That's when we can do the work to bring ourselves back down so that we're not living up here. So if we bring it back down to kind of your body's blueprint of safety. So safety isn't a thought, like I said before, it's a felt experience. So we feel safe, we don't think safe. And we can think all the safe thoughts in the world that we want. If our body doesn't feel safe, we're not going to feel safe. So your body holds memories, patterns, protective responses from your entire life. It holds all these patterns in there, right? And it's constantly living through those patterns. And when you feel tension or heaviness or shut down, it could be the body remembering, it's different things. Maybe you're getting into a gut instinct. There's lots of things that are happening, but the body is responding to its environment. And when I say environment, I mean the sights, the sounds, the tones of voices. So it's not just what someone's saying, you'll respond to the tone of voices, what you can see in body language, what you can see in a room. So how a room feels. So do you feel uncomfortable where you are? And that may be things triggered from the past, it may be things in your subconscious, or it may just be a gut instinct that things are a bit off, and that can come in for all sorts of different reasons. And when you feel tension or heaviness or shutdown, that's when these things are happening. So you can quickly check in with yourself and say, if I had to name the part of my body that reacts first, where is it? So you start to know. So I always know, and I've said this to you loads of times, this is my solar plexus. It's the first time I get a signal of anything. I am aware that I sit with a low level activation in that area. And so I'm always constantly there. So when something's happening and it ramps up, I can feel it really intensely in my solar plexus. So that being said, we now have the brain is involved in this scanning for safety and threat. So the reason they're both included is the communication between the brain and the body. And a lot of it is down to the communication through the vagus nerve, which is two-way. Most of going from the body to the brain, but the brain is sending signals back to the body as well. Because while our body is kind of like responding to all the things that are up, like safety, threat, this, that, and it's responding to all of these things before the brain is actually thinking about it. The brain is involved there because the brain is taking in all the cues and the brain is sending these cues down to the body. The body's responding, sending the message back up to the brain, we're not safe. And so even when you're feeling calm, you are still scanning for danger. And we are programmed to scan for danger. We have a negativity bias to look for the worst case scenario. But we're programmed in caveman days. If we just decided to sit around and do nothing and not notice what was happening, we could die. So we're actually programmed to be scanning our environment always to ensure we're safe. Which actually is, that in and of itself is an exhausting process to go through because we're scanning. Like we're always scanning. And so when we're taking lots of things in, so we've experienced lots of stuff that's caused stress in the past, the more things that have caused the stress and anxiety and problems, the more things that are going to trigger a feeling of not being safe. So it's a bit of a loop as well. Okay, so think about it. So your thoughts create sensations and sensations create more thoughts. So the brain scans. Maybe it notices stuff, sends signals down to the body. The sensations in the body signal fear that goes up to the brain. The brain then creates stories around that, creates the negative, the feeling, the fear, talks about these things in the brain, sends those messages back down to the body. The body processes them, feels the fear, sends it back up to the brain. And so we're stuck in a loop going round. Fear, anxiety, right? It's just like looping round. When we start to notice that loop, it's the first step to rewiring it, okay? Because you can't rewire something you're not aware is happening. When you can notice that actually you're feeding that loop, then you can start to rewire it. So you could actually stop right now. Stop what you're doing, whatever it is, and just notice how your body feels. Not trying to change it, just notice how it feels. What is it sending to you? So then we start to understand what signals is the body sending to the brain and how is that impacting what I'm thinking about? And how is what I'm thinking about impacting my body? And when we can start to calm down the body, we can calm down the thoughts. When we calm down the thoughts, we send positive reinforcement down to the body, and that then sends it back up. So we then change it into a positive reinforcement loop, which is what we really, really want to be going for. So there are lots of ways in which you can reduce the feeling of threat. One of my personal favorites is a soft, long, like a gentle, long breath, particularly a long exhale. So I've talked about this in the past about how when we're stressed and we are anxious and we're dysregulated, we breathe very much up in the chest. Well, sometimes up in the chest, but usually it's up in the chest. There are some forms where we might breathe into the belly, but not see much movement in the chest. It can vary. But we will tend to have quite shallow breaths and they'll tend to be quite short. And you'll also notice that the inhales will be bigger than the exhales, very much like a panic attack. Or the actual same thing that causes it is running. I have had people laugh at me when I say this, but when I trained as a yoga sports coach, one of the things we talked about, because obviously you're working with athletes, and we worked a lot on increasing VO2 max, which is basically their ability to take on more oxygen in their body. And there's a lot of breathing. It's teaching them to breathe through the nose, a lot more breathing through the nose. And we talk about when you breathe through the mouth, that when you're running or doing any exercise, you start to do this, you're activating what we would call emergency breathing. And that's the same when you have a panic attack, when you've extreme anxiety. It's emergency breathing. We are not supposed to breathe like that on a regular basis. However, so many of us spend our time, although we're not breathing through the mouth, the rest of the breath is very, very similar to emergency breathing. And so what we need to do is change that, and that changes the whole dynamic in the body. And that is being really conscious of a really long, slow exhale. And that can make a huge difference. And you can do things that will comfort the body. So you can put your hands on your body and feel that sensation. You can even hold yourself in a little hug. And that can really help to comfort, soothe, and bring that feeling of safety, because hugs and that physical contact brings a lot of safety. But if you don't have anyone to do that with, you can actually hug yourself, and it does have an impact. And then gentle movements that are going to allow you to just free some energy. And especially if they're soothing movements, you can maybe sway and hug yourself at the same time. And that swaying or rocking has a very calming and soothing effect on the body. You'll notice some people with autism may do this. Now, my son loves it if he goes on the swing. You can't get him off the swing. And it's that rocking. It's calming. It's really calming sensation of going backwards and forwards, side to side. So that's what you can do if you want to soothe yourself. It's just rock. And you can say to yourself as you're doing it, I'm okay. I'm safe. Everything's all right now. And you can even put a hand on your heart as you're rocking. Just say, I'm safe. Yeah, I'm okay. And you can do the long, deep exhales as well. So you bring it all together. Rocking, hand on the heart. And just feel the calm come over you. I'm safe here. So just feeling that, and that just something as simple as that can really help to build that sense of safety when you feel dysregulated. And just to build, now we want to talk about building this inner safety long term. Okay, so this becomes about small repeated cues. So doing these things again and again and again. So every time we notice that little rise of anxiety, maybe we just take a 30-second rock and breathe, and just think simple as that, and just build up that resilience over time. And think of it like teaching your body new language or training your muscles. So if you're going to go and train your muscles, you wouldn't do it overnight. You would have to do bit by bit by bit. If you wanted to learn a language, you would have to learn bit by bit by bit. If you're trying to retrain your nervous system, rewire your brain for inner safety, this is about just dropping it in a little bit by little bit by little bit. So, adding daily rituals as well. So sitting with a warm drink and having that comforting sensation. Grounding touch, mindful breath, swaying, all of these things, they all really help. So thinking about what's one moment in your day where you could create a tiny pause of safety, so you could bring that in and start to just think about that and think about where you could do it. And just remembering that once you start to do this, right, and you build this resilience up, triggers are still going to come. Your nervous system is still going to be dysregulated. You're still going to sense these feelings that you're trying to rewire. But what happens is you notice them more often, so you don't spiral. So you don't get that sensation and then allow the thoughts to go away with themselves and build that sensation. So we don't end up in that negative loop. We notice. We come back to our safety toolkit, all the things that we know. We regulate and we get ourselves out of that loop before it has a chance to really take hold. And that's when we start to know that we're really sustaining our rewiring and our growth. And inner safety gets stronger the more you practice it. And it's not about being perfect. It's literally about practicing. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you. I've tried to keep it not too long. Drop a comment and let me know what you thought, what you liked, what you didn't like. And if you do like it, remember to like and subscribe. And if you would like more practices like the one we did, the little quick one we did today, come and join me inside the Sacred Pause. There's a link in the description below, and I'd love to see you on the inside.